Welcome to the Cabrera Lab Podcast.
Hey.
Hello.
How are you?
I am fantastic.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
It's official.
Yep.
2025. It's going to be a great year.
It's going to be a great year.
You notice anything different?
Oh, you got the shirt on. Nice.
Shirt on.
The official first edition podcast t-shirt.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is it. This is the front. You should show them the back. It's got cool stuff on the back.
The back says human with the change symbol and the tagline, things change when thinking changes.
And notice in the winter months, we can layer it, ladies, because it's cold outside.
Get yours now, limited supply.
All right. This is fun because it's New Year's Day. So you know what we're going to talk about?
What?
New Year's resolutions.
Oh.
Because a lot of us have them. In fact, more of us than I thought. I have some fun statistics I want to read to you about New Year's resolutions.
Okay.
And I want to talk about them.
Okay,
so in the United States, approximately 39% of adults set New Year's resolutions.
39.
But interestingly, younger adults up to the age of 34, 59% make resolutions.
Younger ones.
Younger ones.
Yeah.
And people over 55,
They're done with it.
3.1%.
Yeah, either wisdom or they've just given up.
Or maybe we've learned to embrace reality.
Well, that's the wisdom part. So it's either that the age has given them wisdom and they've realized that these once a year kind of things tend to fall flat.
Well, and I think maybe as you get more advanced in your years, you realize the time is now.
Yeah.
Right? If you're going to change something,
today,
no reason to wait till January 1st.
Nobody's coming. Nobody's coming.
Right.
That's a thing we say in mountaineering, like nobody's coming, right? There's no rescue. You get a self-rescue. So if you're wanting to do something, nobody's coming. You got to get at it, and you got to get at it today, not tomorrow.
I mean, I can see the pros and cons of a resolution, so let's talk about it a little bit. So if I'm younger, and I used to be younger, I think sometimes you could use a resolution to have a new mental model of like who you want to be the next year or things you want to do differently. And so in that way, maybe it's a motivational factor.
Yeah. I mean, a resolution is just a goal. There's certainly nothing wrong with goals. The thing that always catches me is I'm pretty sure the entire gym industry, like the big box gyms, their whole business model is based on the idea that most people aren't going to follow through with their memberships. Yeah. In other words, they accept more people than they can possibly handle with the idea that most people just aren't going to follow through with their goals. So again, it's not that and they focus on New Year's resolutions, right? Like because a lot of people, they'll go out, spend the money, get a gym membership, and then never use it. And the gyms count on that. Like the business model actually counts on that.
That's sad.
Well, it's human.
It's smart.
It's reality. So goals. Not a problem. Obviously, goals are great. Having a goal is a vision, a goal, an objective, whatever. Those can be very motivating. Mm-hmm. If we call it a resolution and it happens to happen on New Year's, fine. But really, it can happen any day, every day. And really, it has to be happening every day. Because the bottom line is, whatever resolution you make, you've got to re-up it. Remake it every day.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what's interesting because sometimes I think, not to be too direct, but so for me, sometimes I think it's easy to use it as a hedge. Yeah. Because I'm like, after Christmas, I'll eat less. Yeah. After Christmas, I'll exercise more. Because I just got to, let's just get through Christmas. And in a weird way, it would be better for me just to say, okay, every day I'm going to do this and do that and keep myself healthy and enjoy the holiday, but not use this sort of arbitrary January 1 as, that's when I'm going to actually make the change. Yeah. Because it is hedging. It's hedging on today. Yeah. It's allowing me to permission myself today to carb load and not exercise, which is bad. Well, it's not bad. It's just not my daily goal. Right. I mean, think about it. It's funny.
It's human.
Okay, so do you want to know what the 3 the top New Year's resolutions are, and there's 3 that tie for number 1.
Sure.
You want to guess?
What they are?
Yeah, what the top 3 are?
Oh, God, I wouldn't even venture to guess. I would imagine it's something around getting, fit or something, losing weight.
Losing weight is actually second. The 3 are topped at the tie, but they tie together. So eat less.
Eat less.
Exercise more.
That's 1 and 2?
There are 3 that are tied for number 1.
Oh, okay.
Equally. So it's exercise more, eat healthier, not eat less. Eat healthier, and save money. Those are the 3.
Yeah.
Those are the 3. And then right underneath that is lose weight, which makes sense.
Which kind of the first one is probably for that reason, right? Yeah.
Right.
And then what's the third one?
The third one is spend more time with family and friends, which is actually a good one, too.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all good.
Yeah.
But I think what's interesting to me is we should talk about micro makes the macro, right?
Yeah.
Because if those are the things that people are talking about, save money, exercise more, and eat healthier.
Yeah, the micro makes the macro is a huge idea. It comes from complexity science. It's sort of something I came up with just to kind of capture the essence of what complex systems are doing, is that the micro makes the macro. And I think that's true of pretty much all emergent properties, which all of the things that we want are effectively emergent properties of complex systems, right? So, we want to lose weight. Well, that's an emergent property of micro things, micro choices,
right,
to sleep, to exercise, to build muscle mass, to eat, whole foods and, good food and, and have a calorie deficit or something like that and get your steps in. And those are all micro things that occur on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, right?
Right, meaning that weight loss isn't going to happen all at once. It's every daily choice. Every day, you're choosing whether or not you're going to have the emergent property of losing weight by the things you choose day to day to day to day.
Totally. And micro, I was thinking about this the other day. It's like micro is really micro sometimes. You got to be really micro.
Like micro?
Like micro. Like I heard Gordon Ramsay the other day, and he was saying, that pan is too hot. Throw some oil on it to cool it down. I was like, wow, that's really interesting, right? Mm-hmm. So chefs will use oil to cool the pan down if it's getting too hot.
Yeah.
So they don't even, from a chef's perspective, pan's getting too hot, it's starting to smoke, put some oil in it, it'll cool the pan down, right?
Mm-hmm. While the fish is in it cooking.
Is in it cooking, right? So, or the chicken or whatever it is. And so from the perspective of a chef, that's great. But from the perspective of a person who's trying to order out and stay healthy, that piece of fish just added 300 calories or 200 calories or 150 calories or whatever.
Yeah.
And so a piece of fish is not a piece of fish is not a piece of fish, right? That fish just, and then of course they're going to put sauce on it and a million other things. So what used to be a nice piece of protein that was reasonable just became completely out of control and unreasonable, right?
Yeah.
If you're trying to have a calorie deficit or you're trying to eat healthy or that type of thing, and I think making those distinctions is a micro set of choices. They're choices every single day that you have to make. And you can choose this way or you can choose this way. And society is often set up to super incentivize us to choose the bad choice. Because a bunch of people are going to make money when you make the bad choice. They're using your neurology against you. They're using your cravings against you. They're using everything against you.
Yeah.
Whether that's getting on your phone that extra one time.
Yeah.
And getting that dopamine hit from your phone, which is just reinforcing that behavior, or whether it's looking at the blue light, before you go to sleep, or whether it's choosing to eat out instead of to make a piece of chicken at home that you're in control of, right? Yeah. Or a piece of fish at home when you're in control of that piece of fish.
Yeah, I mean, the irony is that person thought they were making the healthy choice because they chose chicken or fish, thinking that's the healthier meat.
And they're just throw some calories on there, so some empty, oil calories under that fish, just to cool the pan down. So this, this is about taking perspectives. To the chef, they're not thinking about that person that's trying to make healthy choices in the front of the house. They're thinking about, how do I make this thing taste good? How do I cool the pan down? From that perspective, it makes total sense. Put more sauce on it, put more of this on it, put more of that on it, douse it and make a steak, but make it in half a stick of butter.
Yeah, they butter baste it.
Yeah, they butter baste it, right? First of all, I don't feel that good when I eat that.
Yeah.
So after the fact, I don't feel great.
Yeah.
And second of all, I just don't want it. I'd rather have more steak.
Yeah.
Right? I'd rather have a clean steak and get more steak than have a bunch of butter that I'm not interested in, right?
Yeah.
But again, that's that perspective and the distinctions people are making and the micro choices that happen every single moment of every single day.
Yeah.
And those micros add up, and they add up into macros. Macro meaning big picture stuff you care about. Same with finances. I mean, it's all about...
It's true.
It's all about like what you spend, the little things here and there that you spend, they add up. They add up a lot. Quickly.
And people don't even realize, because I just spent, $10 on a coffee.
Or
5 days a week.
Yeah, or the kids just DoorDashed again, for the 70th time this week.
Our nemesis.
Right? I mean,
where you pay more to deliver the food than you actually buy the food.
$30 of Taco Bell and then a $50 Taco Bell charge. It's insane.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about it because I literally had that conversation with myself, which is, because I've noticed lately I'm not paying as much attention to my stricter, because everybody's been sick and it's been a stressful few months, and I'm starting to degrade on my daily goals. Then I realized the other day, I'm like, I'll just make that my New Year's resolution. And then I realized, that's like kicking a football, right?
Yeah,
I just
kicking the can down the road.
And I had that conversation with myself, and I should probably think about that. And I'm sure everybody does that.
Yeah, it's to me one of the things I love, I love science, and I love these amazing, some of these just mind-blowing ideas like evolution and complexity science, and these are big ideas and big important ideas in science. But what I really love beyond the science of evolution or the science of complexity theory or something, or network theory or whatever, is like when you can take the essence of that thing and it so applies to every single moment of every single day life, and if you take evolutionary theory, there's so many things you can learn from evolutionary theory, but just the idea of incrementalism is so powerful, just incrementalism. Yeah. Just you apply that to your everyday life and you realize the power of incrementalism, whether it's saving money or losing weight or all the, I'm just using the three things that people want to do, right?
Yeah.
Or, eating right. People think I'm gonna eat right, and it's a big thing. It's a macro statement.
Right.
And by definition, almost, or just the quality of New Year's resolutions are big. They're resolutions, right? And I think we have to kind of shift the thinking for them to be ultimately micro and ultimately incremental. And then if you take complexity science and you understand micro makes the macro, and then you put those two together, micro makes the macro and incrementalism, and you just have a formula for life there, for living a great life, right? Incrementalism, micro makes the macro. Think about very small things repeating. You get very big things. Yeah. Right? And that's not always the case. In fact, in the old days, believe it or not, there's some historical documentation of the way people used to think about things. So when they saw something like the Grand Canyon, something large, right? Something big, and they would think, in order for this to exist, it's so big, so grandiose, something big would have had to happen. Yes. So if this is the effect, the cause must have been big.
Yeah.
And that was the thinking. So they thought, a flood must have caused this. A huge, bigger than I can imagine flood created this huge, bigger than I can imagine, canyon.
Yeah.
So big effect, big cause.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When you understand how nature tends to work, it tends to work micro effect, incrementalism.
Yes.
So you take micro and incrementalism, and that's what makes the macro effect. So micro incremental causes macro big effects. So if you want big effects, look for little repeated incrementalisms, right? Little incremental, little repeated things lead to big things.
Yeah, because
Bars.
I know. I love it when you did the sciencey thing.
Well, I just
love
think
it.
that
It's very attractive.
science is so
Cabrera.
bars.
Humor me for a second. I think part of that, and this is something I've learned over the years, is we're very distracted by an instantiation, and we very often fail to look for the pattern of things underneath that led to that. And that's not just a great case, our own personal behaviors around eating, money, anything really, how we think about ourselves, any of that.
Yeah.
How do we get better at looking at both?
That brings in kind of I think we've talked about this before on the podcast, that the iceberg kind of example of systems thinking where we all tend to focus on the top of the iceberg, the part that's sticking out of the water is the instantiation, the event, the information, whatever. And we don't tend to see the part that is immediately beneath it, which is the patterns. And then underneath that is the structures. And then underneath that is the mental models. And so this is why mental models are so critically important, or thinking essentially, because those mental models are driving the structures, and the structures are driving the patterns, and the patterns are driving the instantiations. But we're mostly lost and confused and focused on the instantiations.
Meaning we're distracted by what's happening sort of at the surface level of things.
Yeah.
And we're not taking the time to go and look underneath what's the cause of that.
Yeah. So like a great one is just like permissioning. All of these what do you call them? Resolutions. Yeah. They all are subterfuged by things like permissioning, right?
Yes.
So we all, because we're all humans, we all do permissioning. It's like, oh, well, I'm not gonna, I'm gonna stay away from alcohol or something like that. And then my buddies are drinking, so I can. Well, you kind of made a goal not to, and so like, why should that matter? But you make these permissionings, or it's Christmas, or it's New Year's, or right, or it's Thanksgiving, or it's there's always gonna be a reason, and in fact, people are gonna come up with reasons because they're making money off the reasons. They're making they're getting your attention off the reasons, and they're able to sell your attention to the highest bidder. So all of these things are going to lead to just more and more permissions. And then so if you don't see that pattern, it's not going to happen as a permissioning. Permissioning is the pattern. You're not going to see the permissioning. You're going to see the instantiation. I drank. You're going to see the instantiation. Oh, I had that, I probably shouldn't have done that. But you're not going to see like, oh, I did that because I permissioned myself. I did that because somebody else did that, so I did it too. And I was only going to do that once this week, but 3 people around me did it. Yeah. So I did it 3 times this week, right? Or something like that. Yeah. And
well, it's interesting because our resolutions seem like they're a static thing that we're trying to fix, right? But what we really should be doing is focusing on my resolution, if I had to have a resolution, would be to sort of recognize those patterns, break the patterns, so that I don't have to make the same resolution next year. Because I don't have a stat on it, but a lot of people are making the same resolutions every year because they're failing.
Yeah, my advice is don't make a resolution this year on the 1st.
Then when?
Because then you reinforce this idea that you have to wait till the 1st to start.
That's true.
Right? So don't do it on the 1st. Do it on the 31st. Or do it on the 2nd.
Just to change the
Just to be like, this is a stupid mental model that we wait until the 1st to do big things. Right. And we think that big things are big. They're not.
And to reinforce the idea that change happens every day in those small moments, and over time, next year you're actually not going to need to make that resolution because you've resoluted every day in your choices.
The other thing is just like we're all really good at excuses, right? So, all of us do it.
Yeah.
Just love reality. That's cool. We're human. We do these things. So just don't make all the excuses you want. Just don't believe any of them.
Or here's another way to think about it. Embrace the reality that is happening.
Yeah.
And then organize your choices and your resolution, your determination around that. So for example, that's why a lot of people who are successful have a cheat day every 2 weeks, because that cheat day allows them to stay disciplined in the micro, So for example, with Christmas and Thanksgiving, you can say, oh, well, Thanksgiving Day, I will enjoy myself. And then the day after, I'm back to my routine.
Yeah.
And that's the way to think about it.
Interesting.
How is it interesting?
I don't know how I feel about cheat days.
Oh, really?
Because cheat days are interesting because we think of them as like mental things, right? Mm-hmm. But if you understand, the more I understand the physical body and its responses to things, the more I think that cheat days are reality. Your body needs to understand that it's not starving. Otherwise, it's going to hold.
Yeah.
Right? So I get more out of, rather than, if I don't cheat day, then I'm gonna go off the rails.
Yeah.
Right? And that just seems like a more of a discipline thing, which as an ADD person, I just have never believed in discipline because it doesn't work for ADD people. Like, you don't have the attention to have discipline.
So how do you manage it?
Structure. Everything is structure for an ADD person. Like discipline is what ADD people get beat up with their whole life by neurotypical people.
So what you're saying, I just want to stay there for 1 second because I think that's interesting. Because discipline requires control of your focus, what you do instead is you put structures in your routines that create that focus for you because you just follow the structures.
Yeah, again, I'm not against discipline. It doesn't really work if you can't remember, like if you can't be focused on it long enough.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And and the thing about ADD is you don't have total control over what you focus on.
Yes.
You have tons of focus.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have what's called hyperfocus, which is the most extreme type of focus there is in the human spectrum. So ADD people actually it's a misnomer to say that they can't focus.
Right.
Right?
Right.
That they have attention deficit.
Yeah.
That's just not true. They don't have attention deficit. Sometimes they have hyperattention.
Yeah. So much so that's all you can do.
That's all you can do, which is one of the great gifts of ADHD. And sometimes they have hypoattention, meaning like they have no ability to attend to. Yeah. But what the characterizing feature is not whether they have attention, it's whether they have control over their attention.
Right.
A neurotypical person tends to have a little bit more control over what they attend to. So for example, if you have to read something that's to you boring, you can read it. I'm always shocked. Like I'm like, oh God, this is terrible. And you're like, here, let me read it. And I know that you think it's terrible too, but you read it.
Yes.
You're capable of doing that. That's shocking to me. Like, that's not something. If something is deeply boring.
You can't keep your attention.
No,
but I can force my attention on it. I can literally force my attention on it.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah, think of it this way. If you asked a dog to read something, first of all, it would be hard. But then if you asked a dog to read something and then you put like 3 squirrels in front of him, there's no way he's going to end up reading that thing, right? That's like kind of how it feels like. There's just no way there's a squirrel. There is no way, no matter how much discipline and focus I have, if there's a squirrel, there's no way that I'm not chasing that squirrel. Right. And to an ADD person, anything could be a squirrel.
And the world's working against you because you get pings from everywhere. Like you're.
Well, the world is full of squirrels.
It's full of all kinds of squirrels,
which are cool.
And the squirrels push to you.
Yes,
they come,
exactly.
Which is even worse.
So,
whereas I can sit on the deck and let the squirrels crawl on my shoulders while I actually read the thing. I don't want them like that.
This episode is sponsored by Training Camp, the ultimate online spot for building the mental fitness that drives personal and professional change and success. At Training Camp, you'll have access to the science and practice of thinking with personalized thinking assessments, tiered training, and best of all, practice that improves skill. Go to cabreralab.org to learn more. And now, back to the episode.
So the idea of discipline, for me, I'm not speaking for, all ADHD or autistic people, but I'm saying I would bet dollars to donuts that they resonate with this, is a weird one, because if you don't have the attention or the focus, if you have the attention, meaning if you have the hyper focus, then you can be incredibly disciplined. But if you don't, then you won't. Mm-hmm. So a lot of folks talk about discipline, and again, I'm not anti-discipline. Discipline's an amazing thing, but for people like myself, you handle discipline differently. You handle it through structure, which is kind of the system's way. Is like structure determines behavior. So we handle things. If you're going to have success with your ADHD or your autism or whatever, you're going to do it through structure.
I think because system structure determines behavior, that can be as useful for a neurotypical person as a non-neurotypical
Absolutely.
person. I'm not saying that in a defensive way.
No, I agree with. I think that's really an astute observation that is so important for neurotypical people. I feel sorry for you folks because you've bought into this whole discipline thing that's so
constraining
and really judgy, it's super judgy. And the thing is, it's based on, this is good, people are going to not like this, but it's based on a completely just untenable concept of free will.
Oh, the idea that we have choice.
The idea that you have free will, which we don't, of course. I mean, I'm sure a million people are going to write that, we have free will, and we don't. There's nothing in science that shows that we have free will. We have choice. And this is what people are going to get really hung up on is well, I have choice. I can make choice. Sure, you have tons of choice. You have local choice. Mm-hmm. You can choose between the grape smoothie and the banana smoothie. Mm-hmm. You get to choose that. Yeah. But you don't get to choose the gold nugget smoothie. Because that's not available at the smoothie stand.
Nobody makes gold nuggets.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You don't get to choose that. You don't get to choose that because it's not available. So it's locally constrained. You get to make tons of choices, but they're not free choices. They're constrained by systems. They're constrained, not just the smoothie stand, the whole system that the smoothie stand is a part of, and the one that system is a part of, and the one that system is a part of. That system of systems is constraining your choices to such a high degree that in no world would we call that free choice or free will.
Meaning it's choice within a limited set
constrained.
Of possibilities.
Your choices are massively constrained.
Right, and that also speaks to why when we talk about just people, if you look at people and you say, well, this person's successful and this one's not. Well, they are products of that limited choice.
They're products of their limited choice. They're products of their experience and their upbringing. They're products of all these different things.
Right.
And if you didn't have those different things, you wouldn't have that choice.
Right.
That choice wouldn't be available to your mental system or your thinking or whatever. And on top of that, even if all those things were available, there are so many examples in science where we can manipulate you chemically or socially or structurally, where we can get you to do things that you otherwise wouldn't do. If you look at the Stanford prison experiments, those people did a bunch of stuff that they would never have chosen if they had free will, right?
Yeah.
And
that's right.
If I can take a shot of some chemical and put it in your arm and get you to instantly behave differently, How much free will do you really have? You're a slave to your chemistry. You're a slave to your, you have choice. There's no doubt we had choice. I can choose the red pen or the black pen.
Yeah. But you can't choose a yellow pen.
I can't. Right now, I can't. Locally, I can't choose a yellow pen, and I probably can't choose a pen that's made out of, squirrel skulls. I probably can't choose that because it's definitely not. Nobody's manufacturing those pens. Liquefied squirrel cells that have been turned into ink, and you can write in squirrel. You can sign your name in squirrel cell ink or something like that.
Interesting.
I'm trying to make up something absurd because there are so many things. So we say, oh, well, yeah, I have all these choices. No, you don't. You don't have all those choices.
Right. You have
the choices that you have constrained choices. We call them local choices. Localized, meaning, and the local could be local to the popsicle stand, or it could be local to your community, or local to your country, or local can mean a lot of things. But it just means that the system or system of systems that is involved in that choice is constraining that choice.
Right, but then people are going to say or think, well, then what do we actually have any control over in terms of our own fate, our own outcomes?
This is part of loving reality, is realizing you don't have as much control as you think you do. And a lot of that is, again, folks are really afraid of that notion, but I would submit to you and to all of the people that are afraid of that notion that is your liberation. That is one of the most liberating things in the world, to understand that you're not actually in as much control as you think you are.
Well, and I also think it might be the first step to actually embracing reality.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing. And I think people are terrified of it. But it's actually wonderful. It's a wonderfully liberating thing. It takes so much weight off your shoulders when you realize that you're not actually as in control as you think you are.
Right.
And if you just kind of go with the flow. I always say this with, for a while, I did river raft guiding just for the fun of it. Because it's somewhat ancillary connected to the guiding and mountaineering and stuff like that. But I was never a big rafter, but I did it for a while. And so I was trying to pick it up real quick from the other guides, and I would watch the other guides. And it was really interesting to see the kind of old-timer, crusty old guys, the old salty dog guides, versus the young, up-and-coming, strapping young guides. And so the young guides, they were all, this is river rafting, right? So you got the 2 oars, and you're paddling this big boat, and these young guys are just huge and jacked. They got their shirt off, and they're all bronzed up. And they're paddling the boat, and they just believe that they can move that boat anywhere, right? Because they're so strong and they're so powerful, and they're rowing all the time to move that boat where they want to get that boat, and they're working and they're sweating and all that kind of stuff, right? And then you look at the old timers, the salty dogs. They're they got their shirts on, and they're kind of just chilling. They got the big hat.
They're just relaxing.
They're just chilling and then what they're doing is they're watching the river. And then what they do is they're paying attention to the river, and they get ready, they put their oar in, they make 1 or 2 pulls, right? And they turn the boat, they get the water to hit the boat in just the right way, and then the water moves the boat.
Yes.
So the difference between those two is one is paying attention to the bigger system, and one thinks they're in control.
Right.
And when you pay attention to the bigger system and you realize the power of this river is so much more powerful than me. A lot of people would think that's like a statement that is, oh, it's going to make me feel small.
Right.
But it doesn't, for me, it doesn't. It doesn't make me feel small. It makes me feel like, oh, wow. The power of this river, if I understand it, if I love reality, I understand the river and pay attention to the dynamics, then I can use the dynamics in my favor.
Well, and if you think about it, the guy who's rowing so hard is working so hard. Is likely getting frustrated and is struggling because they're fighting the natural currents of the river, trying to control that. But the other one, the salty guy, this older salty guy, he's actually experiencing and embracing reality in that moment, and he's going to be more effective and less tired and have a totally different experience, which I think is a good analogy for everything.
And it's not all about him. For you know, a lot of times when we think we're in control, it's all about us. You know, but it's like I don't. You know, I'm sure there's lots of people that disagree with me on this, but I just think it's one of the most liberating things in the world to realize that things are bigger than you, and you can understand those things by loving that reality and understanding the dynamics and the structures and the power that's in the river. And
I think that younger guy wants to believe he muscled through the river and get credit for managing the river.
That's for sure what he believes, right? And so he's going to go home and he's going to be like, yeah, you know, I did that and I made that. And you're like, you know, it's a river. Yeah. Things are going to go where the flow goes.
That's where go with the flow goes.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're not gonna overcome the flow.
Well, I also think when you said it was liberating, I mean, I think about my own life. You know, once you hit 40, you start to think differently. When you start 50, you think a lot differently. And I think liberation is right, because the minute or the moment where you start to realize that you're probably not in as much control as you want, which is a hard moment. If you're a person like me who is a little bit of a control freak earlier in my life. Uncleaving from that takes a little bit. But the thing is, once you do that, there's room for distinguishing between where you have influence, where you don't have influence, and also just seeing the reality of the situation much differently, because your mental model isn't trying to change the reality at the same time.
Yeah, for some reason, I don't know if it's like the neurodiversity or whatever you want to call it. That's something that early on, maybe because of the struggle in school and things like that, I just never thought that.
Right.
So my whole life, I've been keenly aware that I was not in control.
Yeah, my experience was slightly different.
Yeah.
Because I worked inside of the system, was rewarded by the system, and was constantly reinforcing that I had
they're
control
giving you
of my
Scooby
success.
snacks of like, hey, you're in control, and even though you're not, it's like a facade or something.
It is.
You're not, and again, people are going to have strong reactions to the absence of free will.
So how does agency relate to that? How does agency relate to the lack of free will?
Agency is choice. You have tons of choice. I'm not saying you don't have choice, and I'm not saying that within certain constraints you don't have free choice. You have free choice in those constraints, but free constrained choice is not free.
No.
Right? So we're playing with words here if we say that you have free will ultimately, except that it's highly constrained by the systems that you live in.
I don't want to leave the impression that what you're saying is a lack of free will means we have no agency.
Tons of agency.
I don't want to say control, but no influence on our own outcomes.
You have tons of influence. The absence of free will does not rob you of agency. It doesn't rob you of influence. You have all of that because you have action-reaction, right? If you have action-reaction relationships, which are universal, then you have influence because you can act and things will react, right? You can have effects.
Right.
So you absolutely have influence. You absolutely have agency. The whole edifice of complex adaptive systems and complexity is based on, we call them agents for a reason.
Yeah.
They're the elements of the system, the actors in the system, and they have agency. They don't have free will, but they have agency, and their agency to follow the rules that are governing that system creates the system, creates the emergent properties.
Right.
So there's tons of agency, there's tons of influence, there's tons of actors. There's just not free will.
Right. So if you bring that back to what you were saying at the beginning about micro and macro.
Yeah.
What you're saying is there's a lot of agency inside of those micro choices, that you make, even though they're in a constrained landscape or environment.
Yeah.
And that those micro choices are the ones that are going to create the outcomes that you want.
Let me give you an example. There's always going to be a time. Some days you're going to love the workout. You're going to love what you're doing. You're going to just eat it up, want to do more, all that kind of stuff, right? Lifting weights or running or whatever it is you're doing, right? But some days you can just bet your bottom dollar that you're not going to love it. You're going to feel a little tired or sore, or you're not going to want to do the push-ups or whatever, right? Or it's just not going to feel as good, right?
Right.
So you can put structures in place. One of the structures I notice is if I want to get started, getting started is the hardest part because ADD people have trouble with the transitions in and out of things, right? So getting started is the hardest part. So for example, I have found a structure, which is I do the sauna.
Yes.
And then I do the ice plunge.
Yes.
Because I want my body to heat up on its own. I don't want to do the ice plunge and get in the sauna because the sauna artificially heats me, and I want my body to heat up.
So get that shiver and get the.
I want to get the shiver, and then I want to heat up myself. Well, then that automatically creates the structure of wanting to heat up because I'm cold.
Which means you need to want to move.
Which means I want to move. Which means I get started. Right? I get started because I'm cold.
Yeah.
So that structure in place requires almost no discipline.
Right.
It just boom, boom, boom. The structure kind of takes itself.
Yeah, and it creates the behavior
I don't have to rely on the discipline to let the structure roll. It's like a ball rolling down a hill doesn't need discipline. It has gravity.
No, that's interesting. That's really
So I'm just trying to put it in like a tangible example of what I mean when I have structure. Same with I've talked about it before, but like brushing my teeth. Hard for me, right?
It's hard for a lot of people who are
Yes. Yeah. If I have my electric toothbrush in the shower with me, with the toothpaste, no problem.
I know.
If it's on the counter and I do it in the sink, I will rush through that and I will forget.
Yeah.
Right? So if I put those structures in place, I don't have to work with discipline. I just work with habituated, structured habit. And I'm essentially distributing my discipline in the structures around me.
Yes. And I will say one of the things I've learned over the years, especially and directly credited to you, is this idea of putting structures in place to get the outcomes you want.
Yeah.
I mean, as you know, I am a person who will focus on work and like completely permission myself out of taking care of myself.
Yes. Yeah.
And so what over time I've done is done what you said. It's like I've put a structure. There's a block on my calendar every day that is not scheduled, and I just don't violate that rule. And that removes my ability to permission myself not to get in and take care of myself.
Because you're kind of a slave to your calendar. Like if it's on your calendar, it'll get done.
I will do it. Yeah.
So that's exactly what you're doing. You're putting a structure that works with you. It works with the flow of the river.
Yeah.
By understanding the flow of you, the river, you understand, if I put a calendar item on my calendar, then I'm used to doing that. That's the gravity of the ball rolling down the hill. It's like, well, I had this meeting, then I had this meeting, now I have a meeting with myself in the gym.
Yes. Right? It's a very important meeting.
It's an important meeting. And it's maybe the most important meeting. So you got to get that meeting on your calendar.
Because it's that meeting that makes me ready for all of the other meetings.
Absolutely,
the next
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
No. And the thing is, you have to put a rule in place that you won't violate it. So it's like you have to make a contract with yourself because I know me. So now that structure has changed my behavior day to day, and day to day is going to be giving me eventually the outcomes that I'm seeking, right? Like that I'm trying to get at. I think we took a very deep and interesting tangent.
Did we?
Yeah. So I mean, who knew we were going to end up talking about free will?
I know.
That was New Year's resolutions.
Well, it's kind of related.
They are very related.
Yeah.
We'll start a great debate.
Maybe. Well, I think that's a wrap.